Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
Welcome to the sports podcast that will put you in the zone all the time. Welcome to Pac Sports Zone with me, the Sports Gawd Peter Pacman Clarke. What is going on, people? We are finally back after months off a long winter vacation. Lots of stuff happened, but we're back and a little bit different format from Pac Sports Zone now. As we're going to try to make this a little bit more interactive, a little bit more back and forth. And this first show, just going to give you a little bit of a format rundown of how it's going to be. Listen, it's not going to be just this first show maybe, but it's not just going to be me just talking back and forth to you all the time, and that's it. We're going to have guests on the show. We're going to have reporters come on. We're going to have some Twitter guys come on every once in a while. It's going to be more of a conversation, more free-flowing, not just me talking to you. So we'll have guys, for example, like soccer. We'll have Premier League Yankee Vic on here. We'll have Dre. D-Money Drizzy Dre, that's usually on for some of the betting things. We'll have them talking about soccer. As I said, we'll have some reporters and some writers, beat writers coming on here for football when we talk about the draft. We're even going to have some people on there that deal with wrestling. We're going to be talking about all different sports now. This isn't going to be one show basketball, one show baseball, one show football. It's going to be everything. We're going to try to get everything in as much as we can. We're going to have some short shows that are 20 minutes, and we're going to have some long shows that's 45 minutes. But the point is that we're finally back. We're talking all sports, and we're going to start that today. And since it's on my TV screen right now as I'm watching, it's not English League, it's not Champions League, but it is a German football game, Bundesliga League, Bayern Munich versus Dortmund, and Dortmund's actually winning right now 2-1, as my boy Haaland has 2 goals early. But those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about that we didn't talk about in the previous show. Just to quickly dive into the English Premier League. Man City is dominating it right now with 65 points. Man U coming in second at 51 points. And obviously the team that has been the biggest disappointment is the team that dominated the league last year, Liverpool. They ran away with it last year, completely dominated everybody, won it by a huge amount of points, won it early. And now you look at this year and they only have 43 points. They're struggling. They're not even in the top 4 right now and they're struggling. So we'll get a little bit more into that, as people like Vic, people like Dre, other people on to talk soccer that know a lot more about soccer than I am. And just as I'm speaking, there's a penalty kick by Bayern Munich to tie it up 2-2. And they're just about 44 minutes into the game. So that's still early, right before the half. Moving on to the Champions League. Right now, they're in the middle of the round of 16. They already finished the first half of the games. They're doing the second half now. That'll be a little bit later this week on Tuesday, Wednesday. Bayern Munich, the favorites, obviously, Bayern Munich, they were the champs last year, and Man City, who's also playing extremely well. So it's looking like those two teams are owning the whole league of soccer right now for a little bit. So we'll see what happens as we get into those games later on, as we get closer to the semis and finals of those leagues. But moving on to some other things. I wanted to get this out of the way because it happened last night. 2 things. First, regarding boxing and specifically talking about women's boxing. I am personally not a big fan of women's boxing. It's just because it doesn't really entertain me as much. I have nothing against people that are entertained by it. They just like the sport. They just like it. And listen, women can do anything they want. So they obviously there's some very skilled women out there. Clarissa Shields had a pay-per-view last night, which was groundbreaking for women to have a pay-per-view be the headline. And listen, she dominated her fight. She won 10 rounds out of the 10 rounds. She dominated every second of the fight. I didn't see it. But I mean, she's obviously more skilled than a lot of the women that's out there. And if she or women in general want to get people to watch the sport more, in my opinion, you need more knockdowns. The people that watch boxing, obviously people watch it for the skill of it, but a lot of people watch boxing for the knockdowns, for the knockouts, and there's just not a lot of that in women's boxing. Whether it's Clarissa Shields division, whether it's the heavyweight division, you just don't see it. There was a heavyweight fight last night, but you just don't see a lot of knockouts, and that is something that gruesome part of boxing is what draws people in. That's the reason why Mike Tyson was such a big deal. That's the reason why people turned in to see Deontay Wilder fights. You knew somebody was going to get knocked out. And you don't usually have that in women's boxing. But like I said, it was a breakthrough moment that she was able to headline a pay-per-view. We'll see how well it does. I'm not even sure how much it was selling for. I think somebody said $30, but I'm not completely sure. But we'll see how much it was selling for. We'll see if she gets some of the promotional hype that she gave towards her fellow boxers when they were having their pay-per-views. I'm looking at Shakira Stevenson, who had a little tweet that was deleted before where he was asking for a link to the fight instead of just paying the $30 for it. But we'll see how far she can go with that. She's an undisputed champion now in 2 division classes, the first woman to do that. And once again, I say, if you want to watch women's boxing, more to you. That's great. It opens up more eyes towards the sport because now it'll be more women also getting into watching the sport. It's just not my thing. But I will say this. I don't think that you should be guilted into liking the pay-per-view. If you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't like that sport. And I don't think that you should be guilted into having to watch it if you're a boxing fan. If you're a person that makes fun of pay-per-views, you shouldn't have to hold back from making fun of pay-per-views just because it's a women's pay-per-view. I just think you should be able to be yourself. And I think that's always the best way. But staying in boxing, staying with pay-per-views, and staying with big names, we're going to talk about Canelo Alvarez real quick. He obviously had his sparring match pretty much last weekend. And listen, I have to say, to have him last December going, first of all, he's fine at 168. He was a 160 pounder. Fine at 168, beat Callum Smith to win 1 title. Obviously, that was the second title that he's got after he beat Kovalev to win his first title at 168. And now possibly he's going to get another title going against Billy Joe Smith in May. And then he'll try to completely unify the division if he does that, most likely against Caleb Plant in September. And who knows, at that time, maybe he'll have another money fight against Golovkin. We'll see about that. But for modern day boxing, that is an extremely great productive year of boxing from a December 13-month period. If he can do something like that where you win title after title after title, and then you beat another person that has been your rival for the past couple years. And despite people want to say that Canelo Alvarez and Golovkin are not rivals because Canelo on the books has 2 wins, they are rivals because in normal boxing people's heads, it is 1-1. Golovkin won the first fight. Canelo won the second fight, and this decided. Now, most people, including me, who is a Golovkin fan, thinks that Canelo will win the third fight. Age is not on Golovkin's side. Skill level, because of Canelo has just gotten better and better. It doesn't look like it's going to go in Golovkin's way. But just to say it, listen, I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to pick Marquez to beat Pacquiao when he stone cold him onto the mat, and they had all the sleeping memes about Pacquiao on the floor. So it's boxing. You get hit in the right place, you're going to be knocked out no matter what. So you don't know. I'm a person that doesn't really want to see the third fight because, like I said, I'm a big Golovkin fan. I think Canelo is better, and I don't want to see him get punished because he has gotten hit a lot. However, if you're going to be putting Canelo against the bums that he went against last weekend, you might as well put him against Golovkin again because it's not going to be any worse. So we'll see as that gets along in the year. Canelo on his way to winning Fighter of the Year honors, and we'll see what happens. See if he can first get by Billy Joe, which I think he should in May. Then possibly Caleb Plant. Then we'll see about Golovkin. If not the end of the year, then next year by May. Moving on to another sport that just about to get started. We're in spring training right now. MLB baseball. And I'll be talking more about baseball as the year goes along, obviously. But just to give you a quick rundown on who the favorites are. I mean, who has the big names. Obviously, Yankees are always going to have the big names. Dodgers have the big names. They had the big name signing in Trevor Bauer, who was the Cy Young Award winner last year. So the rich get richer. It's just one of those situations where everybody's going to pick Yankees versus Dodgers. And most likely it won't be Yankees versus Dodgers. That's just how it is. That's how it is in baseball. There's always an upset. There's always an injury. Something always happens. And right now the Dodgers are going to open up the season as a 4-1 favorite to win the World Series. The Yankees are going to be a 6-1 favorite. And right after that is actually a division rival for the Dodgers. The San Diego Padres will be an 8-1 favorite to win the World Series. So right now the projected by betting wise to be in the NLCS and ALCS is the Los Angeles Dodgers versus the San Diego Padres. And on the other side will be the New York Yankees versus the team that I think, and I'm predicting to go to the World Series, the Chicago White Sox at 9-1. The White Sox are a very young team, and I thought they were a year ahead of progress by how well they did last year. But now they're ready to just go for it. They're completely they got some of the youth and matureness from last year, and I think they're really ready to roll in the AL. And listen, I just don't think the Yankees have enough pitching yet. I still think they need another pitcher to go with Garrett Cole. And we just don't see it. Tanaka went back to Japan this year. Even though he wasn't pitching well last year, he was still a veteran presence there. And without him, I think they need another guy to step up with him. Obviously, they have some candidates to do that. But we'll see what happens. But as I said, Dodgers 4-1, Yankees 6-1, Padres 8-1, White Sox 9-1. Just behind that, I just want to throw in two teams just because one is my team and two is a little surprised that they're there. Both at 10-1, the Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets. And listen, I understand they got Liriano, not Liriano. They got Lindor, Francisco Lindor. So they have a MVP candidate type player that they got this all season. But there's no way in my mind that the Mets and the Braves are on the same tier right now. The Braves have won three straight years. They've pretty much been in control of that division other than Washington giving them some run. Washington obviously won it all a year ago, but Washington still wasn't even there in the regular season with the Braves. I think right now the Mets are really living a lot off of hype. We'll see about that. Everybody's going to go off their starting pitching, but their starting pitching always gets hurt. So we'll see if they'll be able to last. And their bullpen is usually bad. And we'll see if Diaz will be able to wake up and go back to what he was in Seattle, or if he's going to be blowing more games and replaced. There's a lot of things to discuss with the Mets, and I think they're getting a little hyped up. I mean, when the offseason started, we said they have the new billionaire. He'll be able to get everybody that he wants, but yet he's let Springer leave because few million. He's let Trevor Bauer leave because of few million, and there was rumors about him, maybe them looking at Ozuna. He went back to the Braves. So I wouldn't really be jumping on their bandwagon yet. Maybe they will be able to put it together within another year, get more people, and we'll go from there. But I don't think they're there yet. So I don't like that bet at 10-1. But they have the Braves, I think over the win-loss, 84 games or something like that. I think that's a clear over. So take it as you will. We'll get a little bit more closer to baseball as the season gets closer. But for right now, I think this is a good start. I think seeing how these teams are gonna gel together during spring training. I mean, even up to the last second, even now, there was like they may still add the DH into the NL, but it doesn't look like it's gonna happen this year. It looks like it most likely will happen next year. But it's going to be fun to watch, and we'll be here at Pack Sports Zone to talk about it. As I hope you guys send in some questions, send in some comments. I'll read them right on the air. I'll answer any questions right on the air. So you can always get me on Twitter at Pacman, Pacman 453323, and you can send any questions in. And also, you can also go to Two Dudes and a Mexican, their Twitter site, and you can also send in questions through that. We'll get them either way. Moving on. Just want to touch really quickly on this, not spend too much time. Football is going to be coming up. The draft is going to be coming up within the next, I would say, 8 weeks. About 8 weeks. And it's a quarterback's draft. And every year is a quarterback's draft, but it's a chance that the first 4 picks in the draft could all be quarterbacks. Obviously, Atlanta at 4 has Matt Ryan, but they need to start looking towards the future. Matt Ryan is getting up there. He's not going to get them to another Super Bowl. Julio Jones is getting up there in age. We know wide receivers usually peak by 30. They usually start declining, and he has hit that mark. So it's going to be very tough for me to see Atlanta turn it around with those two as the top guys. They're going to have to start over, and to do that, you start over with the quarterback, with the offensive line, with the defensive line. And that kind of is the story of this draft, in that you usually want to build your team through mainly three positions: quarterback, offensive line, and defensive line. And this year is very weird. And the reason why I say you can see quarterbacks go the first four spots is because other than the kids still from Oregon, there's really no offensive linemen that are top five worthy. And with that being said, if there was, offensive linemen always go top five if they're top tier left tackle offensive linemen. We don't really have that this year. And with that, you look at defensive line, you try to get pass rushers. This year doesn't really have the stud pass rusher this year. I don't see a pass rusher going in the top five this year. So that'll tell you right there that this is the down year for pass rushers. So you don't have a dominant pass rusher this year to go top five. You have maybe one offensive lineman to go in there, because I don't think an offensive lineman will get by Cincinnati. So you got at least a kid from Oregon, and the rest is quarterbacks. There's a lot of rumors that you could see wide receivers, one, maybe even two, go in the top five. And I don't think wide receivers should be going top five. Wide receiver is a position that you take care of after quarterback, after D-line, after O-line. So that'll tell you how down of a year it is for offensive linemen and defensive linemen, that they're talking about one or two wide receivers going in there instead of offensive linemen and defensive linemen. And with that, I think you're going to see a lot of trades in that top five, because obviously number one going to be Trevor Lawrence. That's really, you'll hear people say, oh, they're thinking about trading. They're not thinking about trading. They're taking Trevor Lawrence first, and that's it. Number two is where it gets interesting, because you got the Jets, and number three at Miami. Both of them have young QBs right now. Sam Darnold, they have to make the decision. Are they going to keep him and roll with him, or are they going to trade him for like a second round pick and take a QB, which will be either Zach Williams or Josh Fields? Miami, they do like Tua, but I think their situation is, are they going to trade for Deshaun Watson or not? Now, Jets also look for Deshaun Watson, but I just don't know if it's going to work out. So, but definitely between Deshaun Watson going to one of those two teams, I think is that would change up the draft, obviously, because then Houston would take one of those QBs. Another team trying to trade up for a QB, Carolina Panthers. They're not locked with Teddy Bridgewater now, even though he's still under contract. And I think they're going to trade up. They definitely have a possibility to trade up into that top three with Miami, with the Jets, because they want as much picks as possible, specifically the Jets. The Jets definitely want to trade down and get as much picks as possible. Miami wants to trade down because if they're not going to get Deshaun Watson, they'll keep Tua. And if they're going to keep Tua, then I think they either take a wide receiver, which they can trade down a couple spots and take that, which is why they'll be perfect if they traded down with Carolina, or Detroit. Now, I know Detroit just went and got Jared Goff in a trade, but Jared Goff is not their future quarterback. They didn't make that trade to get Jared Goff. They traded that. They traded Matt Stafford and got Jared Goff because they know in another 2 years they can cut Jared Goff. It's not really going to kill them too much. And they got a load of draft picks because they got 2 firsts in that deal. So they're looking at the long term. They know they're not going to be good for the next 2 years. So they said, all right, we'll take this guy on. We'll pay a salary. And it's pretty much we're paying for a first round pick. So they got 2 first round picks in that deal, and they'll be able to move on and be good from there. But like I said, it's going to be a lot to talk about and who's going to take who. One thing like I said, this is one of those shows where it's not going to be just one topic or the other. I just thought of something that I wanted to touch on with the boxing because I think it's very important to touch on it. Next weekend, you have Chocolatito and Gallo. You have Roman Gonzalez versus Juan Francisco Estrada. 2 boxers that are 2 of the best in the division. They've been two of the top 3-4 best in their division for years. Chocolatito at one point was the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world. And they fought 9 years ago. Roman won. It was a good fight. Those two always, in their fights, usually put on really good fights. And now they're going to fight again. And this is going to be one of those fights that you have to see just because if you're a pure boxing fan, guys that throw a lot of punches, guys that have a lot of skill, guys that can knock people out, this is the fight that you want to see. So, listen, I understand this other fight. This is the opposite of what I say in terms of women's boxing. They have the skill. They don't have the power. They don't have the aggressiveness that a fight next week will see. If you want to see a fight, you watch the fight next week between Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez. And I had to mention that just because, listen, I would be killing myself if I didn't mention that on a sports show and that talks about boxing and not mention that fight is going to be next week. Now, we're going to have another show before that comes on next week, but I just have to let you guys know just so you can mark it down on your calendars because that's a can't miss fight. That's going to be in Texas. And anybody that can get to see that fight, you have to see that fight. That's going to be an awesome fight. But moving on to another sport, I want to touch a little bit on wrestling because, like I said, wrestling is going to be part of the show now. I'm going to have people on that have spoken and that have a rapport with wrestlers, have connections with wrestlers from WWE, NXT, AEW, and just to quickly go through some of the stuff. People that watch that are going to be listening to this anyway. So WWE right now, congratulations to Bobby Lashley. He finally won the WWE Championship. And I understand people don't want to make a big deal that it is a black person that is now the WWE Champion. But there has not been that much of them that have won the championship. You go back to the first ever one in Ron Simmons. You go back to even recently with Kofi Kingston. You go back to Mark Henry. You go to Booker T. You can count them probably on two hands, the amount of black wrestlers that have won the WWE Championship. And even if you go back, say maybe a year or two, Bobby Lashley was being wasted in this group, in this organization. He was in a stupid plot where he was dating a married woman in Atlanta, and it was just stupid. It was more of a soap opera, but it was a bad soap opera. And I'm glad they have let him unleash him. And you have to thank MVP for doing that. And it's just been good to see that somebody that has that much talent, he has the raw power. This isn't fake in that he's done this in real life. He was an MMA fighter. He was a top tier MMA fighter. And now he's showing that he can be a beast when the spotlight is on him. And it's going to be a great match. Hopefully him versus Drew McIntyre, at WrestleMania. So that's going to be really fun to watch. Moving on to NXT. NXT is probably my favorite group to watch right now. They have good storylines, but they have great wrestling. That's the thing with them. It's more of the old school wrestling in terms of it's not when you watch Raw, you watch SmackDown. It's for the characters. It's for the talking. It's just how they act. When you listen to the NXT, you're going for the skill of the wrestling, the craziness of the moves. So I'm much more of an NXT person. But they have some really good things going on there. Io Shirai, long-term women's champion. If you look at even NXT UK, both of their champions have been champions for like 2 years. It's not one of those where you have a championship getting changed hands every month or every 2 months. They've had it for 2 years. Before Walter, who's the NXT UK champion, he won the title from Pete Dunne, and Pete Dunne had the belt for 2 years. So you've had two champions over a span of 4 years. So he's actually really close. I'm not sure if he broke it yet, but he's about a week or so away from breaking Pete Dunne's record of 2 years holding the title. So it's really one of those old school where the champion was a champion for a long time. And it's just a fun thing to watch right now. They have some funny segments. Johnny Gargano, where he's yelling at psychiatrists and everything, talking to Austin Theory because he's been kidnapped. I'm telling you, there's some fun things to watch if you watch NXT. So I definitely suggest you watch that. And obviously with AEW right now has been signing a few of the former WWE guys. Whether it's FTW, whether it's now the Big Show, just recently made his debut last week. Sting is on there, so you do have some older guys. But they have been right now, like, pretty much telling you that there's going to be a big signing there for their pay-per-view this weekend. There's really no hints about who it's going to be. People are trying to put out rumors. Obviously, who's going to be the big name, because they're really making it out to be a big name. And with that, it's tough to decide, all right, who from WWE is going to come, or maybe New Japan, if there's a big, whether it's Okada. Okada's not coming. From WWE, people are mentioning Lesnar. Lesnar's not going to come because Lesnar's kind of locked in with WWE. Even though he doesn't have a contract, he's kind of locked in with Vince. If he were to turn on Vince and go to AEW, I mean, that's the complete heel turn right there. So I don't see it being somebody like that. I don't see anybody like Cena or anybody like Undertaker. I don't see that. Their guys are so loyal to the WWE. I don't see that happening. But it definitely is going to be a big name. So in my opinion, it's probably going to be somebody like Kurt Angle or somebody from New Japan Wrestling. So that, but I think it has to be somebody from WWE for it to have a big impact, because true wrestling fans, obviously they know New Japan Pro Wrestling, but as a big market casual wrestling fan, they don't really know as much about New Japan Wrestling. So I think for them to be saying it's a big name, it has to be a big name from WWE. So that's part that makes it interesting, and that's the reason why I predict it's going to be Kurt Angle. But moving on, but like I said, we'll talk more about that before WrestleMania. We have one or two guests that'll come on, talk wrestling, give their prediction about WrestleMania, probably right around the time that we have Fastlane pay-per-view coming on for that. As WWE is actually, their network starting March 18th will be moving to Peacock streaming app. So everybody that's on the WWE network will be able to we automatically switch towards that. So sign up if you have to. It's going to be cheaper. For the normal Peacock is $4.99, and I think it's $9.99 for their premium. So but that's something they'll obviously send you an email about that and everything if you have the WWE network, just to give you more details on that. Moving on to the last thing I just want to talk about for today's show, college basketball. I have to say, college basketball has been really fun to watch, and to be honest, it hasn't been the last couple of years, in my opinion. But this year, there's three dominant teams so far: Michigan, Baylor, Gonzaga. Gonzaga is the only team in the nation that hasn't lost yet. Michigan has 2 losses; they're 19-2, and they've beaten a lot of ranked teams. So a lot of people think Michigan is actually the best team in the country. And then Baylor, who haven't faced the best schedule. They've only lost one time all year. They lost to Kansas. So it's kind of questionable. Those 3 teams are the obvious number 1 seeds. The question is who's going to be the 4th number 1 seed. Even if they lost another game, like in their conference tournaments that are coming up, they'll still be number 1 seeds. But I think the biggest question is, one, is Baylor for real? Because they haven't really faced the same top tier competition. 2, is Gonzaga finally going to do it? Are they truly ready to make the rise towards being the number 1 team in college basketball and cutting down the nets, not just for the Final Four, but cutting down the nets for everything? And 3, can Michigan, with Juwan Howard now as coach over the past couple years, change the whole team around this much? Because if you had spoken, I'm a Michigan fan. If you had spoken to most Michigan fans last year, they would have said, all right, maybe another couple years to get everybody in. We didn't get the top tier guys yet. We had Isaiah Todd, who ended up going to the D-League. He was going to be a top 20 recruit, and he left and decided to go. Imagine if he had stayed and he was still on their team right now. It would even more unbelievable to have another top 20 recruit on this team. They are so deep. They've gotten people that have transferred from outside, from other colleges. And 2 guys, really, Brown and Smith, the point guard Smith and the small forward Brown, have been really good and really integral parts of making this team better, because they're both 3-point shooters. Brown's a good defender. He's a good rebounder. Smith runs this team beautifully. So the people that they've gotten from the Ivy League with Smith and Brown, I forgot what school he went to previously, but the people that they've drawn in the past couple of years have really helped. And obviously Hunter Dickinson, the center, freshman, He was also highly recruited, but I didn't think he was going to be this good. He's been really one of their best players, if not their best player, along with Livers there. And listen, that team is ready to go. I think this is one of those years where I think they'll be in the Final Four, and they have a legitimate chance to win it all. So I really like Michigan this year. But college basketball as a whole has been fun. The biggest things about college basketball right now that's going to be talked about is Michigan State and Duke, two teams that are perennial guys in the tournament every single year. Both of them are having bad years. And Michigan is playing Michigan State tomorrow. And another loss by Michigan State, I think it'll be like their 12th loss or 13th loss this year. That could be it for Michigan State. Their long streak of making the tournament could be done, and it could be buried by a crosstown rival in Michigan. Duke is in there every year. They won a championship a few years ago. Duke has just not been good this year, but they have been playing better since the kid left the team. He decided to leave the team early, I guess prepared towards the NBA draft. And since he has left, they have played much better, but it may have been too late. We're not sure. They may still get in because it's Duke. And listen, as bad as their record has been, as bad as Michigan State's record has been, it's hard to me to believe that they're going to put a lower team or a mid-major that's been doing a good over a Duke or a Michigan State when it comes down to it and they're written on the board. So I'll believe that when it actually happens. So we'll see if that will actually happen. But with that said, I appreciate everybody tuning in to listen to the new version of Pac Sports Zone. And like I said, on Twitter, my name is Pacman, Pacman 453323. Send in the questions then, send in comments. I want to hear what you guys have to say. What do you want me to talk about on the air? If you want to talk about golf, you want to talk about tennis, I don't care because I watch all of them. I just am not an expert on those guys, but I do watch a lot of those too. So call in if you want to talk about NASCAR, if you want to talk about that. I watched the Daytona 500 a couple weeks ago. I got very confused about the stages because I haven't watched it since they've implemented stages into it. So that kind of weirded me out a little bit to see Denny Hamlin win the first stage, win the second stage, and then third stage is completely different. Like it didn't really mean anything to win those stages. So maybe a NASCAR expert to call in and we'll talk about that. But I appreciate everybody listening to the show. I think we're going to have a good year. We're going to have a good back. Sports is back. Everything's starting to open up a little bit. And I think the best thing right now is just enjoy it. It's been gone for a long time. It's back, and we're starting to enjoy getting out a little bit more, but keep wearing your mask because we want to stay out. So with that said, I'm your host, Peter Pacman Clarke, the Sports Gawd. I'll be with you again early next week, maybe even late next week to talk more. Obviously, we'll talk about the Gallo versus Chocolatito boxing fight. We'll talk about everything from the Champions League happening on this week. What's happening as the conference tournaments start in the NCAA basketball. NBA, didn't even talk about that as about the All-Star weekend. This is the All-Star weekend. They shouldn't be having it, in my opinion, but they're going to have it. I think Steph Curry will win the three-point contest, and hopefully Zach LaVine gets in the finals with him, representing the Chicago Bulls. First time the Bulls have had an All-Star in a while. Go back to Derrick Rose days, but I'm your host, Peter Pacman Clarke. I'll catch you guys next week. Peace out, guys.